That's right, everybody. Welcome back to the Walkoff here on 90.3 WMSC Upper Montclair. Folks, it's the only show on the Montclair State College airwaves that gives you everything that's going around in baseball. We love talking about it. You love hearing about it. I'm your host, Vincent Pacone, and I'm joined by the always amazing Anthony Walsh. Anthony, welcome back, bud. How we doing?
We have Pete Alonso back. This is what I've been waiting for what feels like 10 years now. I'm feeling pretty good, man. I can't be much better right now.
Wow. And this is probably the happiest I've seen Anthony. I don't even think you were this happy when you guys got Soto.
No, I was happier than that. But, I mean, I'll get into it more. I was happier for Soto, but I'm very happy that we don't got to worry about the whole first base Vientos thing, what's going to happen at third base. Those worries are gone now. So I'm in a good mood. Yeah.
And I love to see it. I was really considering, of course, I mean, I think we could just jump right into it, that I was really considering seeing, Pete Alonso in a new uniform. And was I angry about it? Yeah, maybe a little bit, because he is a great Met, and he's done a lot of great moments for them. But on top of that, I really wanted to see him in a different uniform because I thought it would mean, hopefully something different.
You should want that. If I were you, I would want that.
I don't know. Getting into this as quickly as possible. Yes, the amazing, the spectacular, the exciting Pete Alonso returns to Queens on a 2-year, $54 million deal, and there's a player option after the first year. Steve Cohen and Dave Stearns met with Alonso and Boris in person in Florida before the eventual reaching of the deal. I mean, I think this is all because of that one question that was, what's going on with Alonso? Mm-hmm. And then Cohen's got to make a different change, and Boris is now he's in the hot seat. You got to make a move somehow. A team wants your client. You got to go get your client. And I think Alonso did the right thing here. He signs the 2-year deal. I would have liked to see him in a Jays uniform. I heard a lot of Yankees fans saying they would have liked to see him in pinstripes.
Well, they were never going to do that. I think that they had once they saw Soto leave and they realized that Rizzo's, isn't what he was. I think Goldschmidt was pretty much a lock to go there. But as for, the Mets and Alonso, the reason why I like this deal so much is because it's essentially a 1-year deal, right? I mean, I know on paper it's 2 years, but unless Pete Alonso has by far the worst year of his career, he's going to opt out, which I'm fine with because you know who's available next year? Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and that's exactly who I want. So if Pete Alonso goes and has the year of his career this year and helps us, dare I say, win a World Series or get to a World Series, and then next year we get the younger, better Vladimir Guerrero while Alonso signs a long-term deal elsewhere, good for both sides in my book. I mean, I know there's a lot of sentimental Mets fans out there that want to see Alonso be a Met for life, and I get that. But at the end of the day, it's best for the Mets to have the younger, better Vladimir Guerrero, and this deal sets that up. And also, he's the highest paid first baseman this year after having a bad year. So I think it works out for both sides right now.
I mean, he's very durable, which I think is a big part of his statistic. He played 162 games this year, 154 last year, 160 before that, 152 before that. He plays a lot of games. He's not very injury prone. He played 161 games in his rookie year. My biggest thing, though, is, the home runs are there. That's fine. But how much longer can you really see this production being to the point it is? I mean, he's batted 240 last year, 217 the year before that, 271 the year before that. But he really hasn't remade that 271 average. I like Alonso. He had a down year this year. His production was a little bit lower, a lot lower. He went from 118 RBIs to,
88.
30 less? Is that? Yeah, 30 less. That's not entirely his fault. An RBI is not really his fault whatsoever. But you look at the market, it was very, very low. To say that Alonso was like the best player out there at this point is scraping at I'm not saying the bottom of the barrel, but definitely not the top of the barrel in any shape or form. I think the Vlad market's going to be huge next year.
Without a doubt. I mean, the main issue here isn't just that everybody talks about his age. He's freshly 30 years old. He's not that old.
No.
But the problem is the type of player he is. He's a first baseman, a big first baseman, not a great defensive player. That type of player usually doesn't age very well, and he's had a steady decline really since 2022. 2023 was not a bad year per se for him, but it was nowhere near what it was the previous 3-4 years of his career. And then 2024 for any other player would be a pretty good year. For Pete Alonso, it's not that great. Pete Alonso thrives off of obviously the home run, but also the RBI and also OPS plus. I mean, Pete Alonso's OPS plus in 2022 was 146. Past 2 years, it's been 123. What's that going to be when he's 32, 33, 34, 35 years old?
Yes, and that's why I don't think if the Mets really want to, go for a World Series, he's not going to be a Met for life.
No.
Pete Alonso will not be a Met for life because of that. I think that it's just that simple. What I will say, though, is he has, found a good spot that has wanted to keep him. He's playing in a big market. He's playing for the right team, you could say. There's a lot of teams out there that will let their stars walk. Honestly, if he was a Red prior to this year, we talked about how Ellie De La Cruz last week, he's probably going to leave when he hits free agency, whenever he does, because the Reds are just not willing to pay players.
Yep.
And it's the same thing with, other teams out there, with the Rockies, with, these smaller market teams. Pete Alonso's very lucky. He's in a big area. He hit a big home run. He had some very good seasons. He's a Rookie of the Year. He's been in the MVP voting 2 of the last 3 years. He's a good player here for the Mets, and he's done a lot of good work. And rightfully so, he's going to stay with the Mets for a little while. Now, I'm not sure how long it's going to be after this contract, and if you are right about this going for Vlad, I don't really know where that. I'm going to be honest, I don't think the Mets go for Vlad. I don't know why they would go for Vlad.
Who do they go for?
I don't think Vlad. I think they have enough bats.
Well,
I would go for pitching.
You don't know. Well, yeah, but we don't know why they would go for Vlad.
Well, I think everybody's going to go for Vlad. Everybody has a reason to go for Vlad.
Right.
The Phillies have a reason to go for Vlad. But
will they make a hard push for him? Like,
yes.
Oh, okay. But I thought you just said no. Okay.
No, I don't think the Mets will make. I out of the teams out there, I don't know if they'll be one of the harder pushers. They have Soto. They have Lindor. They're going to have Pete for a year. I think they're good on bats. I don't really see the reason.
But who's playing first base then? Because
Pete Alonso.
Well, you're going to re-sign him after, because look,
this is a 2-year deal.
No, if it's a 2-year deal, if he gets hurt or if he has by far the worst year of his career, like way where, like, unless he like I said, gets hurt or has a horrendous year, he's going to opt out because he could easily get more than $24 million or whatever, $26 million or whatever it is on the open market.
I'll tell you my reasoning for why he's not going to do that.
Okay.
He's definitely annoyed with the market. He definitely hates the market. He had to deal with the market for the past, 3-4 months?
Right.
Yeah. He definitely hates the market. If I was him, I'd say I'm just going to stay in New York for another year. Because at least I'd be playing baseball at this point.
If you were him, but what about what he's going to do?
I'd hate to tell you something, Anthony, but I'm actually Vincent.
Just your take.
I have
take.
no idea what he's going to do. I don't know.
I'll give you my take.
I will say that I think the Mets they're loaded right now. They don't really need anybody else at this point.
Well, no, I'm talking next year. Okay, let's say this. Pete Alonso has essentially a carbon copy year as last year.
Okay.
Does he opt out or
No.
not? No. He doesn't opt out?
It was one of his worst years. Of course he's going to stay with the Mets.
Okay, if he puts up 88 RBIs, if he puts up 34 home runs, you don't think he could get more on the open market than a $20-something million deal just for this year?
I don't think so. And just because the market's so bad now. Listen, we've been talking about it all the time. Scott Boras has really lost his reputation for being a good agent this year entirely. I don't think he really gets it back, and I don't think next year. I mean, Alonso has said openly, I'm going to stay with Pete Alonso, or I'm going to stay with Scott Boras.
That makes me even think more that he might leave because Scott Boras, agree with him or not, and I agree he's had a bad couple of years here with Jordan Montgomery, with Pete Alonso, but he's also had some of the biggest contracts in the sport and just in sports history in general. And Scott Boras isn't all of a sudden going to change who he is. Scott Boras is a guy that is going to push his clients to test the market, push his clients to bet on themselves. And this is, think about it. The Mets offered Pete Alonso a 3-year deal worth more money. He chose the 2-year deal worth less money because he would get that opt-out after this season. Now, why would he do that? Because obviously Pete Alonso is agreeing with Scott Boras. He's stayed with him through this terrible offseason for him. And the bottom line, no doubt Scott Boras and Pete Alonso played this wrong. They could have gotten a monster deal with the Mets a couple of years ago. But for the situation they were in, he's the highest paid first baseman this year. And he gets another shot at the market if he wants it. So it's all on him again.
I don't see it happening. I really don't. He's not going to be the highest paid first baseman next year because it's going to be Vlad.
No, I agree with that, sure. But he can still get more money.
I don't know. We'll have to see here on the walk-off. But, tell me, Anthony. There's Vlad out there who's going to cost a buttload of money.
Mm-hmm.
There's Josh Naylor, who I think will be a little bit of a discount kind of guy. Yandy Diaz, he'll be entering his age 34 season. Salvador Perez, he'll be 36. I don't really think the Mets are going to go for him. Wilmer Flores. I think the Mets, if they want to contend, they don't really need to get the number one guy on the market for first base. They can go for like a Rhys Hoskins. They can go for a Josh Naylor, who's also 29, only 2 years older than Vlad. But I don't know where Vlad goes. He's not going to Toronto. He's not going to go to I've heard he might go to the Yankees. I don't really believe it because that's a division rival. I think the only reason he's leaving Toronto is because they're not going to pay him.
Well, yeah, that's part of the reason, but also I think he's a winner and he wants.
Yeah, but he would win there now
with Toronto.
Yeah, I think he could be a winner in Toronto. I seriously think he could be
after this year.
No,
well,
because he's going to leave this year. Right. I think this year you got Santander, you got Bo Bichette, who I'm going to say it. He's going to be fine. He had a bad year last year. Everybody has bad years. It's all good. But I think Bo bounces back and has a great season. I spelled Bo wrong. Sorry, I was looking up his stats. But I wouldn't be surprised. He bounces back. This team doesn't really have to worry that much. They're in a stacked AL East, which is the biggest problem for them. But, yeah. See, Bichette dealt with injuries this year. 81 games, 225 average with 4 home runs. Way down from his other career statistics. I think he bounces back. Would not be shocked if he bounces back whatsoever. And you have Santander, who I don't think is really going anywhere. Their pitching needs work, to say the least.
Right.
Max Scherzer is their 4-starter, which we talked about last week. I don't think that's going to work anyway. But Kevin Gausman, probably going to have a down year. Their biggest problem is the pitching, and that next year they're going to be losing Bo Bichette and Vlad Guerrero, and they're not going to get them back because they're not going to pay them enough. You also have 2 superstars leaving. They might be able to keep one. They're not going to keep them both.
Well, let's say the Blue Jays were willing to pay him. Would they be serious contenders to win the World Series if they re-signed Vlad Guerrero? I don't think at all they would.
To win the World Series or to just go to the World Series?
To win it.
No. Nobody's a serious contender until the Dodgers start losing.
Yeah, but the Dodgers are obviously the favorites, but the Mets are in there. The Yankees are in there. You could even throw the Padres in there. There's teams there where you could say, okay, these teams are serious World Series contenders. Not that they'll necessarily win it. Even if the Blue Jays signed Guerrero back, even if they signed Bichette back, which if they're going to sign one of them, they won't sign both. I don't think they sign either. No. I agree with you on that. But let's just say they did sign both of them back. Their problems are still their problems. They've had both of these guys for how many years now, and they've gone where? I
think the closest they've gone is to the ALDS.
There you
go.
And
then they don't do anything. I know. Listen. It's weird because you have 2 guys that, honestly, by the end of their career, would not be surprised if they're Hall of Famers. In Bo Bichette, for 2 different reasons. It's not like they're both power hitters, and you're putting them on the same team. You're putting Bo Bichette, who hits for average, and then you have Vlad, who hits for power, on the same team, and they can't do anything. And now you add Santander, who's, I'm not saying is a Hall of Famer, but is a very good player right now, to this mix-up. And it's just, I don't see it working only because they're just going to lose him. They're just going to lose.
And that goes back to why I think that when Guerrero leaves, it's going to be to a team that has the really good odds to go win it all.
Do you think he would rather go to a team that would want to build around him or just win it all with him?
Win it all. Because he's young, but he's not 22. He's going to be, 26 by the end of this?
He'll be 27.
27. Okay,
Yeah,
so he's going to be... So he's right in that sweet spot where he's in his prime still for another 3 to 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to go to a team that is going to win. I mean, I'm not saying that it's a lock to go to the Mets. By any means, anything could happen. We don't even know what position we'll be in a year from now. I mean, who knows what's going to happen in terms of injuries, in terms of performance, and all that. But if he wants to go win in his prime, you got to either go to the Yankees, you got to go to the Mets. Dare I say the Dodgers, depending on what happens with Freddie Freeman. I can never rule out the Dodgers. I know they have Freddie Freeman.
But come on, Anthony.
But he's old. He's an old first baseman. I mean, yes. Believe me, I still believe he's one of the best hitters in the game. But for how much longer?
My goodness, Anthony. Come on.
I'm sorry to get you down.
I thought we were better than this. You want to know what? The walk-off is going to go to a quick break. When we come back, oh my goodness. Right now, if you're listening to this show and you really are just like, oh, Anthony Walsh, please don't mention the Dodgers. This song, folks, is for you. It's Shut Up and Drive by Rihanna. We'll be right back. And welcome back, everyone, to 90.3 WMSC Upper Montclair. You're listening to The Walk-Off with your one and only host, Vincent Picone, and the amazing Anthony Walsh. We have some, I wouldn't say breaking news. This happened yesterday. But Harrison Bader is going to the Twins on a one-year deal. He's been bouncing around recently with a mutual option for 2026 worth $6.25 million. Yoan Moncada, the former top prospect, is going to the Anaheim Angels on a one-year, $5 million deal. All right, I'll take it. Now, the big one that I'm talking about is Jack Flaherty signing with the Tigers. 2-year, $35 million deal. I like it. And I have a lot of reasons to like it. Because, one, I am a Tigers fan because of my brother, which is very known on the show that I do love the Tigers because my brother Leonardo loves the Tigers. And I have just all of that. And funny story about Jack Flaherty getting this signing. I was at a Philadelphia 76ers game with my brother and my dad. And I was talking to my brother on the way out, and we were talking a little bit about, hey, Tigers really, they're looking pretty good. They had a good offseason. And he was like, yeah. Like, they've been pretty good. The only thing I want now is I want to get Jack Flaherty. And we sat in the car. The game was over. The Sixers lost awfully to the Celtics. And we sat in the car. And I go, oh, Leonardo, guess what? You got your guy. I showed him the phone. And 2 years for Jack Flaherty. I love it. I love this deal so much. And I feel like a Tigers team that has been waiting for finally a good deal after Javier Baez got there. And I have no idea where Javier Baez has been because I think he left his soul in Chicago. But they get him. They also bring Gleyber Torres there. I still have a lot of hope in Spencer Torkelson, although I heard he could be on the outs. Yeah. They also get who am I missing here, Anthony? I know they got Tommy Kahnle.
Yeah, underrated signing, by the way. Tommy Kahnle's he's a veteran, right? But he's still pretty solid.
Yeah, listen, if we've seen anything in these last couple of years, it is that if we've learned anything these last couple of years, it is that bullpens win games. It's not defense. Mm-hmm. It's not the starting pitching. It is bullpens. If you can get a good lead, you can win with the bullpen. Now, the one example that really did shock me that they lost was the Guardians. Because I was like, as long as they get a lead, they're going to be fine.
Well,
they just never got a lead.
That was the shock of the
postseason
for me. They got a below 1 ERA at one point.
Now, Anthony, my big question to you is, with these new additions, with Jack Flaherty, with Tommy Kahnle, with Gleyber Torres, with who am I missing here? They also got Alex Cobb. Wow. Not saying that he's going to be great. But they get Alex Cobb. How good do you think this team's going to be?
I think they're going to be in serious contention for that division. I think it's going to be a real dogfight between the Royals and the Tigers. I look at this. I mean, the top three of their rotation now: Skubal, Flaherty, Reese Olson. It's a pretty solid top three. Now, I'm not, living in Fantasyland. I know Jack Flaherty has his limitations. I mean, he was the one pitcher that the Mets really hit off pretty good in the championship series, and he's nothing special per se. But he's a consistent guy to go out there. He'll give you over 100 innings. He'll give you an ERA that's around 4, maybe mid to late 3 ERA. If you rely on him, then it's no good. But another aspect of it is the guy's a veteran, and you're dealing with a pretty young rotation there. I mean, Tariq Skubal, as great as he is still a really young pitcher, and so is Reese Olson. Reese Olson, who, by the way, never really gets talked about, but is a really solid 1B, if you want to call it, to Tariq Skubal. Obviously, he's nowhere near Tariq Skubal, but you get my point. He's still a really solid starting pitcher. The Tigers are still a little bit away. The back end of that rotation is still not as good as it can be. The bullpen is still a little bit of an issue. But this is a lineup that you go down, you have some really solid hitters in there, and you have a really solid rotation. And that AL Central, outside of the Royals, and the Guardians too, I know. The Guardians, I'm not totally discounting them. But that's a division that can be won if you go on a run.
I like it, Anthony. I think this could be a dogfight because my envision for this year is Twins probably going to stay neutral. Wouldn't be surprised if they don't contend.
Yep.
Guardians are going to be working their way down a little bit. I think they haven't really done that much to make them
good,
better.
But not what they were.
When you trade away Josh Naylor, what are you going to do? And then you get Carlos Santana instead. Totally fine, but it's not 2017 anymore.
Yeah.
It's not that same Carlos Santana. So there's that. I think the Royals are on their way up. I think they worked to get a little bit better this year. They did trade some pitching, which I'm still interested to see how the Jonathan India trade works for them.
Exactly.
And then the Tigers, I think, are another team that are working their way up. It looks like it's finally working. I have always had a deep appreciation for Jack Flaherty. And this is because from 2018 to 2021, where his 3 of those years were really good for him. ERAs below 350 in all but 1 year, and the 1 year was a 491 in 40 innings in 2020 when he was 24. But from 2018 to 2021, he was really good. And then he kind of fell off for a little bit. His name kind of disappeared. It didn't look very good until 2024 when he got picked up by the Tigers.
Yep.
And then he got traded to the Dodgers. And he was really good for the Tigers. He had a 2.95 ERA in 18 games started. I love that. Like, he was a guy that I remember in his rookie season, he was dicing up guys left and right. And the year after, he was still dicing up guys. And then after that, he kind of fell off. And it didn't look like he was coming back anytime soon. But he really has. And he's a lot of fun to watch. Now, I will say, he had a little bit of a bounce up when he went to the Dodgers. He had a 2.60 ERA around in almost 60 innings. But in 106 innings with the Tigers, he was dominant. And I think you're right, Anthony. You don't want to rely on him. You don't want to put all the pressure on him. But you're working in an organization now, which is a little weird to say this about the Tigers, where you don't need to be the number one guy. You have the reigning Cy Young. You have Reese Olson, who was dominant last year. He was a lot of fun to watch.
Yep.
Jack Flaherty, he's going to work in there and be a lot of fun. Then below you still have Casey Mize. You can work in Jackson Jobe or Matt Manning, however you please. I think Alex Cobb is going to go to the pen.
Maybe.
I don't see him making that many starts before they need to make a switch or do something with him. But then you go to the pen. Will Vest is fun to watch. Bew Brisky, I liked watching last year. Tyler Holton was a guy that was really fun to watch. Jason Foley, another guy. Jackson Jobe is probably going to mix in the bullpen a little bit more because he's a younger guy. Now you add Tommy Kahnle there. I like that. That's a good setup guy. My only big question is, how are the young guys going to work? Is Torkelson going to work? Mm-hmm. If Torkelson doesn't work, what do you do with Torkelson? Because it's you're kind of in a weird spot now. He's 26, or at least he's going to be 26 this year. Colt Keith, he was really good last year. He had his sparks and his good moments. Andy Ibanez the same. is Gleyber Torres going to have a bounce back season? I think the Tigers are a lot of fun to look at. They're a lot of fun to look at, and they're a lot of fun to envision. My biggest question mark is, can the names on paper do the work that we think they're going to do on paper on the diamond?
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge year for Spencer Torkelson, without a doubt, because if I'm not mistaken, he was one of the top 5 prospects in baseball
Absolutely.
at one point,
Yeah.
if not one the top. And he's never really lived up to it. That said, he's also not that old. He still can have a year where he makes up for it. I mean, it's tough. I want to say that they're going to win the division. Probably not. I think it goes back to the Royals. I think the Royals are just Bobby Witt, by the way, too. I mean, am I really going to discount Bobby Witt? That guy runs that team.
Exactly.
And they made improvements. So I'm going to say no, but I think it'll be within 2 or 3 games at the end. I think, we're sitting here in September. I think we're going to say, wow, the Tigers had a better year than a lot of people thought they were going to have. And I know they made the playoffs. I'm not making it like they were the worst team in baseball. But I think they're going to take a major step forward. And once again, you get to the wild card, anything can happen. I mean, a year ago, were we sitting here thinking the Mets were going to get that far? No.
Were you thinking the Tigers were going to make it that
exactly.
far? No.
So anything can happen. I think they'll do a step forward. I'm not saying they're going to go win anything. I think the Royals might win something. Now we'll get to that when we get to our predictions. They're still a few pieces away. They got to have a little bit more active of an offseason in the future. They got to be more willing to spend. But this is a team on the come up if things go right.
Do you think they could be in contention for next year? A guy like Vlad, a guy like Bo Bichette?
I'd like to say yes, probably not.
I
believe me, man. I'd love to sit here and tell you that this is because Detroit is such a good sports city. I mean, we see that with the Lions in the playoffs now, and they've been tortured. And I mean, they have. I mean, I sympathize with it because I know what it's like. And if they were to go sign Vladimir Guerrero Jr., that would be their Juan Soto type moment. That would be their Mike Piazza type moment if you want to go back even further. That would really change the franchise. I don't know if it's going to happen. I'd love it for them, but I still think that they have a path to that World Series if they go and have better off seasons.
Because they're just one of those small market teams that doesn't look like they're going to spend. I think you're right. If you get a guy like, also another name that we really haven't mentioned. It's not. He's got a club option with a buyout of $2 million, but Luis Robert Jr. He's could be on the outs next year. Like, these are names that for one team may be like a really good addition. For the Tigers, for these different kinds of ball clubs, would be the best offer ever made for them. Like, it would change records. And I think the only fear that if I don't really know the Tigers GM, but if I'm in that position, the only thing I would be saying to myself is, well, you want to know what? One, we tried that already. We tried to get Baez. We thought he was going to be huge. He was an MVP candidate before he came here. He won a World Series before he came here. And now, now he has like issues with playing with others, and he doesn't want to be a leader in this and that. And I think when he was on the Cubs, he didn't really need to be a leader because you had Anthony Rizzo, you had Chris Bryant, you had Kyle Hendricks, you have these big names. You know what I'm saying. And then he comes over to Detroit, and he just, in his last 3 years, 238, 222, 184, he hasn't been consistent. Or forget about consistency. Consistency's out the door. He hasn't been good. He's been awful to watch. It's been abysmal. I can't watch him.
I would say, in terms of starters, probably the worst player in baseball because the guy strikes out more than any player I've ever seen strike out.
Yes. And it's nothing that's going away. So if I'm the Tigers right now, I'm saying, well, my goodness, props to Javi Baez, who's going to be a free agent in 2028.
Oh, boy.
And we got to deal with him. We've spent $140 million for 6 years of Javi Baez, and quite frankly, I would not be shocked if Javi Baez doesn't hit double-digit homers or doesn't hit over 250 in his time. He had double-digit homers his first year when he was 29, 17 home runs. But since then, he has not. Wouldn't be surprised if we never see that again from him. Wouldn't be surprised if we ever see him hit over 250. I mean, it's been bad. It's been really bad.
Here's how I look at that Javi Baez signing. I think that's a signing that's an excuse for that owner to say, hey, we spent money. But in reality, when you got Javi Baez at that point, you knew that he wasn't what he was. You just, as a Mets fan, I saw he wasn't terrible with us. I didn't like how he came here and did the thumbs down thing, and he was way overrated. But you knew he was not what he was in 2016 with the Chicago Cubs. Well, 2016 he was like 21, 22 years old. Of course it's going to be different. He was at his peak then, and now he was coming off of the average going lower and lower, the strikeouts going up, further up. You knew he wasn't going to be the same. It was a stupid contract. But if you're going to use that, if the owner's going to use that as an excuse to say, hey, we spent money on Javier Baez, it just hasn't worked out, and then you don't sign a 25-year-old or whatever, 26-year-old, whatever he is now, Vladimir Guerrero, that's a cop-out. I'm sorry, that's a cop-out. Like, they have the money. They do have the money. Maybe a little bit less will be in the owner's checkbook by the end of the year. You know what? Too bad. If you own a team, you got to spend that money. So I would love to see it for them because you know what? It makes things more competitive too. Like, if you don't go and spend, they're going to be right back to square one eventually. Like, you're just going to be terrible eventually. You're not going to keep lucking into really good young players. You got to spend to win in this league. And it's a problem that we're going to see eventually when the CBA agreement runs out, and we're going to have the same lockout again that we had last time. Hopefully not that long. We'll see. But I really want to see some of these lower market teams spend, because even if the Mets benefit from it and go and win World Series, which I really hope they do, obviously, but if they can become a Dodgers type of team, you want worthy competition. You don't want to just be a dynasty because nobody else is spending. Like, that hurts the sport too.
It really does hurt the sport. And I'm looking over Javi Baez's stats. A two-time All-Star, Silver Slugger. His best year, of course, that weird 2018 season where he hit 290 out of nowhere. And then he hit 281 the next year. After that, he hit 203, 265. I think it is a cop-out. I think it's first of all, we've seen managers have to deal with it. After Joe Maddon, who did a wonderful job managing the Cubs for all those years. After that was done, and he went over, I'm not going to use the Mets because he only played 47 games there.
And he stunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Tigers managers constantly needing to take him. He's not running out ground balls. He's lazy on the infield. He's doing this. He's doing that. Blah, 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 blah. Like, it just gets to a point where it's like, what are you even doing now? How are you conducting yourself on this team? I understand, yeah, you're 31. You didn't expect to be a leader, but you signed the contract.
Yep.
You can't say, I didn't really want to be a leader, and then look at the team that they had. And I get it. They had Miguel Cabrera when he got there. Mm-hmm. But you can't look at this team and say, oh, well, Miggy's he's the guy. He is the captain of this team. Like, no.
And he knew by then Cabrera was on his way out.
Yeah.
He was at the end. And if you know what? You take a deal that worth that much, over $100 million, which in today's baseball economy seems to be not that much. I mean, you go back to Juan Soto getting almost $1 billion. But you take that much money, the team should be able to say, if we want you to be a leader, you should go be a leader. You're getting paid a king's ransom to go play a kid's game. You better produce, which he hasn't. And if you don't produce, at the very least, be a good veteran in that clubhouse, which, by all accounts, doesn't seem to be the case. I don't know. I really would like to see them get out of that contract. It's not going to happen because they're not going to get rid of a guy they're paying that much money, and nobody would want him. So they're kind of stuck with him, which is like the worst place to be in with a player. But, yeah, I mean, it is. There's nothing worse when there's a guy on your team that's terrible, but you can't get rid of him because the owner isn't going to eat the money. But, yeah, I really hope to see, I think pretty much no matter what, unless, something unforeseen happens, the Royals are going to be very good because Bobby Witt is just too good. He's one of those guys that's not going to accept losing. He's going to drive that team to win. The Tigers don't have that guy yet. I want to see them get that guy. And maybe Guerrero would be, but I don't think it's going to happen.
I also like to see Riley Green become that guy. I really like Riley Green, and I think he has a bigger upside now than Torkelson just because, he was an all-star last year. But we'll have to see how that Tiger season goes. You can listen here every week for updates on that. But another big thing happened. We were just talking about the Cubs. We're going to talk about them again. They get Ryan Brazier in a nice trade with the Dodgers. Dodgers DFA'd Brazier the other week. They get him for some cash now. Cubs get him for some cash. Great deal for them. Brazier, of course, 36 years old. Last year, played in 29 games in 28 innings. He had a 3.54 ERA, giving up 11 runs. And I mean, the Dodgers had a dominant bullpen. I remember constantly hearing about Blake Trinan, Brazier, Kopech. There were so many guys in that pen that dominated the World Series. Then you bring out Walker Buehler. Like, they have the weapons. I don't think this is a loss for the Dodgers, but I think it's a huge W for the Cubs.
Yeah.
This is someone that, they get Ryan Presley. They got Kyle Tucker. Now they get Ryan Brazier. This team's looking a little bit different. Moving our focus from the Detroit to Chicago, not too far away. They've really done a good job. You see Shota Imanaga, he's going to ball out. Justin Steele coming back from injury, hoping for the best from him. But this bullpen, I mean, Anthony, stop me if I'm wrong, but it's sneaky scary.
It is.
Nate Pearson, Eli Morgan, who had a good year last year, Keegan Thompson, who was fun to watch, Colin Ray, who was a former starter, and now you're adding Ryan Brazier to this mix. I like it. I know he's 36. I understand that, but relievers usually can go for a little bit longer.
Yeah. And another thing, too, just noticing off first glance, aside from the good numbers that they have, they give you innings, which is a really underrated aspect of a good bullpen pitcher. But yeah, this is honestly pretty surprising to me. I didn't realize. I mean, I knew they had gotten Presley and everything. I didn't realize how quite good that Cubs bullpen is, and it makes me feel a lot better for them this upcoming season. I'll tell you that much. You go through, almost every guy is in the threes with his ERA. I mean, you go down the line. Ryan Presley, obviously, Porter Hodge, Brazier. We just talked about Tyson Miller. I mean, these are guys that maybe you don't know the names of besides Presley and maybe Brazier, but they're good. They just are. They're good. And I'm curious to see, I mean, do you think the Cubs have a real shot at, first of all, getting a playoff spot? And if they do, how far?
Playoff spot, I think so. I think this team I think they're there. Maybe. Horner at second, Dansby at short, Michael Busch, who's been playing out of his mind at times, at first. Then you got in the outfield, you got Ian Happ, Pete Crow Armstrong, Kyle Tucker. And you can switch Happ with Suzuki as much as you want, or one of them is going to DH. Then that's how it's just going to go. Or Suzuki's probably going to DH. I think they're there. My only concern really is after Imanaga, after Steele, how much does Jameson Taillon, Matthew Boyd, and Javier Assad really have in the tank?
Yeah.
Kyle Hendricks is gone. He's with the Angels, right?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Look at us. We know what we're talking about. It's a 1-2 punch that's scary, a lefty-lefty mix that's really scary. Matthew Boyd had some really nice moments in the playoffs this year against the Yankees and the Tigers. Jameson Taillon, I don't know if he's got anything left. I think both of them are on the same streak of, is there anything left in the tank? Can they keep moving forward? Javier Assad's got gas, but I don't know how he's going to use it. Justin Steele and Imanaga are my guys to look at for this team. If they want to make a big playoff push, I think I'm not comparing this to the Phillies rotation, but it's the Wheeler-Nola mix right there. It is the Clayton Kershaw, Zach Greinke back in 2014 mix. It is the back-to-back mix that if you're a lineup you probably don't want to be facing, as long as they're healthy. Imanaga didn't really show that he's going to get hurt that much, but Steele did. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to be in a position where Steele gets hurt, goes down, and you're just looking around who's going to be our number 2 guy, because Imanaga can carry the one.
Yeah.
But I don't think Steele, he's got to stay healthy if they want to make a playoff spot. What do you think?
No, I'm with you on that. This is one of the rare teams where my criticism isn't with the bullpen, which is kind of weird because any team usually like this, the criticism is with the bullpen. My criticism, I echo you 100% with the rotation. My concerns are also the same concerns. Also that lineup, though. That lineup, I like Ian Happ, I like Kyle Tucker, I like Suzuki. Kind of what you said, the middle to the bottom half of that lineup worries me a little bit. I still think Pete Crow Armstrong can be what scouts thought him to be when he was a Met. Pete Crow Armstrong was a highly, highly coveted prospect. He was the guy that went to the Cubs in the deal for Javier Baez, ironically enough, who we were just talking about. But if the middle to bottom half of this lineup can perform, which they're more than capable of performing, by the way. They have Dansby Swanson there, Nico Horner, Pico Armstrong. There are some hitters in there that should be able to hit at least 260, 270 and give you 70, 80 RBIs. I don't see any of those guys that shouldn't be at least doing that for you. But the problem is, are you going to get that? I don't know. If they do, I think they make it deeper in the playoffs than people think. I think they're a sneaky good team. But then it goes back to that rotation. But, I mean, I could also raise the question, let's say they're in a solid position at the trade deadline. Do they go and do enough? It goes right back to that same, I mean, I hate to do the same point over and over. Is the team willing to actually do enough to win? Like, I don't know, but it'll be really frustrating if you see, like, let's just say, for argument's sake, outside of the Dodgers, the Cubs have the best bullpen in baseball, just for argument's sake, okay? And just for argument's sake, the lineup is performing really well, but my concerns with guys towards the middle of the bottom of that lineup are real. Are they actually going to do something? I don't know.
I will say this. Anthony, tell me if I'm wrong. All right? Call me out. If they're going to win, and lineup-wise, the outfield is going to need to carry them. With Ian Happ, Pete Crow Armstrong, Kyle Tucker, Seiya Suzuki. Mm-hmm. It's going to need to carry them. Because I don't see production coming out of John Birdie at third. I don't see production coming out, that great production coming out of Carson Kelly behind the plate.
Yep.
And then Michael Busch, yeah, he's been good, but I don't think he's going to give the amount of production the other ways. And Dansby just, I mean, great defensively, really good defensively. The bat was really never there, and it hasn't been showing up in Chicago either way.
Yep.
So that's my take on the Cubs. But I think they got a good closer in Ryan Presley. I think he still can ball. I think their relief pitchers, I really like Nate Pearson still. I like a lot of these guys. I think it's going to be an interesting mix. Again, this is one of those teams that, in my eyes, if they're going to make a playoff spot, it is going to be a kind of like Phillies 2022 run.
Yeah.
You need to get hot at the right point. If they're like the Phillies this year and they're just like, oh, we're going to ball out the entire year, it's not going to happen. You're going to be eliminated first round. If you want to make it right, you got to get hot just at the right time.
And make moves.
Yes.
Because you know what's not even more demoralizing to a locker room, even if you're having a good start? Seeing your front office do absolutely nothing. The players do not like that. I'm telling you. It's obvious, but if you're having a really solid start to your season and you make no moves, that makes you feel like the front office doesn't believe in you. Mm-hmm. And so, what did the Phillies do in 2022? Made moves.
They made moves. They got Turner after that year, and then the year before that, they got, no, you're right, Anthony. They made moves the year before. They made moves leading up to it. But this has been the Walkoff on 90.3 WMSC Upper Montclair. We want to thank our listeners for coming and listening to us today. And sadly, we will not be here next week. I have a wedding to attend to. Boo! But
no Zoom from the wedding?
Yeah, I'd love to talk for an hour about it. I'm actually going to be in a car from a week from now. But we wish all of our listeners a happy Valentine's Day when we come back in 2 weeks from now. Guys, it's spring training baseball. Finally, we get to listen to some spring training baseball that Anthony and I will be excited for about 1 week. And then we'll go, all right, there's no news happening. They're just taking out the starters after 3 innings. But
so our predictions at that point.
Then it's predictions time, which is always a fun time. We want to thank our listeners once again, and we will see you in 2 weeks.